Hello everyone, welcome to Ekam Academy. Today we are talking about UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was negotiated in Earth Summit, which is International Conference on Environment and Development, and it came into force in 1994, and at present it has 198 countries. Coming into news, why it is in news. COP-27 is happening in Egypt of United Nations Framework for Convention on Climate Change. Before going to COP-27, let us discuss some of the institutional setup of UNFCCC. UNFCCC. Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties is the supreme body of the convention, and it is the Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC held every year. It was held every year, and it came into force in 1994 with an aim to reduce the greenhouse gases concentration. We have seen the droughts in China. Recently we have seen droughts in China and the floods in Pakistan. All these are because of the rise in the global warming, which has the worst effect on the environment. Coming to subsidiary bodies, UNFCCC has two subsidiary bodies: the subsidiary body for scientific and technical advice and the subsidiary body for implementation. It has also the secretariat, which is in Bonn, Germany, and it provides the technical advice and expertise and review of the climate change information reported by the parties, and it also maintains the registry of nationally determined contribution established under the Paris Agreement. Coming to some of the important agreements of UNFCCC. COP1 happened in 1995 at Berlin, Germany, which come up with Berlin Mandate. Coming to COP3 1997, which has happened in Kyoto, Japan, and it came up with Kyoto Protocol. This is where the developed nations are held responsible for the average rise in the temperature and the climate change. Kyoto Protocol came into force in 2005. Kyoto Protocol, its aim is to fight global warming by reducing the greenhouse gases emissions in the atmosphere to the level that prevent the dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climatic system, and it is ratified by India in 2002 itself, and it aimed to cut the emissions of GHGs across the developed world by about 5% by 2012 compared to the 1990 levels. It came up with a concept called common but differentiated responsibility. All the nations are collectively responsible for the climate change, but the responsibilities are not equal, as the developed nations are reason for the rise in the temperature during the industrial era development in 19th and 20th century. So this is the only global treaty with binding limits on greenhouse gases emissions. Coming to some of the agreements of UNFCCC, COP24 happened in 1998 in Buenos Aires Plan of Action, and COP5 happened in 1999 in Bonn, Germany. COP7 2001 in Marrakech, which has set up the stage for ratification of Kyoto Protocol, and COP8. Coming to COP8, which has happened in 2002 in New Delhi. This is the only time the Conference of Parties of UNFCCC held place in India. It came up with Delhi Ministerial Declaration. It called for the efforts by the developed countries to transfer the technologies in the relevant sectors like energy, transport, and gives the funding to the developing nations to minimize the impact of climate change on the developing countries. COP11 2005 happened in Montreal, Canada. Kyoto came into force here. As I said, Kyoto Protocol came into force in 2005. COP13 happened in 2007, which results in Bali Action Plan, and COP14, which happened in 2008 in Poland, and it launched the Adaptation Fund. It launched the Adaptation Fund under the Kyoto Protocol. COP15 happened in 2009 in Copenhagen, Denmark, mentioned the Green Climate Fund. Green Climate Fund is a fund where the developed countries have to contribute $100 billion every year for the climate change to the developing countries. However, this $100 billion mark has not been reached. Coming to some of the other agreements, COP-16 2010 happened in Cancun, Mexico, which adaptation of the Clean Climate Fund and a Climate Technology Center. COP-17 happened in 2011 in Durban, South Africa, and it approved the governing instrument for the Green Climate Fund. COP-18 happened in 2012, which results in Doha Amendment to Kyoto Protocol. COP-19 happened in 2013 in Warsaw, Poland. The term INDC, Intended Nationally Determined Contributions, was coined in Warsaw. COP20 2014, which has happened in Lima, Peru, it urged the nations to take national pledges by finalizing their nationally determined contributions. Coming to COP27 2015, COP21 2015, which results in Paris Agreement, famous Paris Agreement. This is where all the countries agreed to come up with their nationally determined contributions. This is the collective commitments by the nations in the future years, and it set a goal of limiting the rise in the temperature to 2 degrees Celsius, preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial level. Coming to COP22 2016, which happened in Marrakech and also called as the Action COP or the Agriculture COP. 2050 Pathway Platform was launched here. COP23 2017 it was happened in Bonn, Germany, and COP24 2018 has happened in Katowice, Poland. Coming to COP25, which has happened in Madrid, Spain. It is the longest COP ever and it is a failure. COP26 happened last year in Glasgow, Scottish. India in COP26, which has happened in Glasgow, India came up with its Panchmit strategy. Basically, Panchmit strategy is a five-fold strategy in which India is to reach non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030 and to fulfill the 50% of the energy requirement via renewable energy by 2030 and reduce the 1 billion carbon emission by 2030 and reduce the carbon intensity of the economy by 45% by 2030 over 2005 levels and achieved the target of net zero by 2070. What is net zero? The amount of greenhouse gases emitted in a country should be absorbed back by the carbon sink created by the country. This is basically net zero, balancing both the sides. Coming to COP27. COP27 is happening in Egypt in a place called Sharm el Sheikh, and many of the agendas are the discussions regarding many agendas are taking place, but one of the important agenda is loss and damage funding. When the climate change happens, when there is a rise in the global temperature, the polar ice at the Arctic and the Antarctic zone start melting. When they start melting, it results in the increase of the sea level. When the sea level increases, the small island nations which are present are at highest risk. So one of the island nation called Vanuatu, since 1991, it is demanding all the nations to help regarding this issue, and and it represents the alliance of small island states. And these island nations are demanding help from the other nations regarding this issue. Outcomes of the agenda. The COP27 adopted the basic demand of a fund to acknowledge assistance needed for particularly vulnerable developing nations. Basically, all the nations are agreeing that they are responsible for the climate change. But when it comes to funding, not even a richest country is ready to fund for the climate change to the vulnerable developing nations. The world is warming up due to the emissions from the burning of fossil fuels like oil, coal, gas, etc. And we have already seen the rise in the temperature to 1.1 degrees Celsius, which is heading towards 1.5 degrees Celsius, and further increase is life threatening. So, to emphasize that global transition to low carbon economy, it requires at least 4 to 6 trillion in annual spending. In COP-26, India has given a plan how it is going to reach net zero by 2070. And it was mainly focusing on public transport, nuclear energy expansion, hydrogen missions, national hydrogen missions, and ethanol blending by 20%, and we have already reached 10%, and increasing the financing of the climate change initiative, etc. So, coming to some of the other programs like Mitigation Work Program of UNFCCC. This would begin this year and last until 2030, and under this Mitigation Work Program, the governments are requested to revisit their strategies and strengthen the 2030 targets in their national climate plans by the end of 2023, and to accelerate the efforts to phase down unabated coal power and phase out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, and to reduce the greenhouse gases in application sectors through increased renewable energy and low emission energy. Challenges: as I said, there is no contributions have been pledged to the Laws and Development Fund. There is no setup like where the contributions or the funding is coming from, and this is resulting the extra burden on the developing countries, and they have been asked to revise their climate change actions with progressive strong actions every year, and developed countries has failed to meet their commitment. For example, they have failed in relatively small sum of $100 billion every year to the developing nations for the climate change. So this is all about UNFCCC. For more such informative videos, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you. All the best.